So welcome back to 3rd Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and this one is going to be another historical scenario which was given to me by Lord of BRAGOLLACH, and I believe he has a little bit of help making these scenarios from Vision and Darkwolf and those people who are making scenarios at the moment. So I don't know who made the map, or at least who edited the map, but I'm sure that someone in the comments will let me know, and then they can get due credit that they deserve. Because this is a slightly edited version of the Dead Marshes, in which there are a couple of encampments, a few sort of wider areas, because under normal circumstances the Dead Marshes have got a lot of these bodies of waters, and it can become quite a labyrinthine map really, and you can tell where it's been edited in places here, because the terrain is sort of a little bit different where the lakes have been removed. But this is a historical scenario, and I don't really want to embarrass myself by trying to say the name of it, but it is essentially a battle that involved King Finrod Felagund of the Elves, and essentially how he was saved by someone covering his retreat. And I believe it was a human kingdom, or at least a human king that covered his retreat, because the armies that are coming to his aid are going to be Rohan, although I believe it's just a representation of the kingdom that actually came to his aid, because I think Rohan are one of the newer kingdoms, at least, you know. In Lord of the Rings, I think Rohan didn't exist back when these armies were actually, these people were actually active. But we'll go through, I think, the Orc armies first of all, because I don't think there are any rules attached to the Orcs per se. I think they're just going to be sort of flooding forward. And we have Lord Master Eothard playing as the Witch Realm of Angmar, and Angmar, of course, going to be very much at home, being very aggressive. It's their primary go-to strategy to be very rush-centric. And they've got a couple of Warg Riders here on the front, and they also have some Warg Skirmishers as well. Obviously Rohan are going to bring some cavalry, and also Imladris' cavalry, while it's smaller in number, is also very elite, so these Wargs will be quite useful to sort of stop any sort of counter-attack from the Elves and from Rohan. So we've also got some more Warg Skirmishers over here. They've also got, their infantry is rather spread out, but it doesn't really matter too much because of course they do have to march into position. Some Witch Realm Scourge Raiders, which I believe have the armour upgrade. Indeed they do, they've got their helms on. The Witch Realm Scourge Raiders will be a little bit different in 0.97, they will gain a ranged attack as well, but for the time being they are very much just a dual-wielding unit in melee, which they are capable of dishing out a fair amount of damage in melee, but they're also quite fragile to range fire because of course they have a lack of a shield. Even with the armour upgrade, Elven arrows in particular are going to be able to find their mark relatively easily on them. We do have some more Scourge Raiders over here, as well as some Angmar Marauders. The Angmar Marauders, of course, very much the grunts of the Angmar army. A lot of the time you'll see Angmar outside of a scenario go more quality-centric and instead go for Guardians of Kharndoom and maybe a smaller but more elite army. But if you do want to go numbers, of course, as all of the Orcs are very much capable of, then the Angmar Marauders are going to be your sort of standard line infantry. Not very high in terms of quality, but very high in terms of numbers. 250 per unit is a lot for the enemy to try and carve their way through. Angmar Marauders as well, but of course it's worth saying that against Imladris, the infantry advantage is going to be squarely in favour of the Elves when they're just sort of marching their way through standard Angmar Marauders. Over here we have more Scourge Raiders. The armies are all a little bit spread out, of course. Trolls of Angmar as well. Their big shields will come in very handy, actually, as they sort of advance towards the Elven positions. And then back here we have, I think, 3 units of the upgraded Guardians of Kharndoom, which again, nice shield value, good armour, very survivable. They'll be a little bit better at sort of staying alive than the Angmar Marauders in front of them. And Eothard's general over here is going to be in the Witch Realm Blackguard, of course, which is a unit which can certainly go toe-to-toe with most of the Elven infantry as well. Very, very powerful indeed, and I think that's pretty much it for Eothard's army, at least in terms of unit composition. There's some Angmar Marauders over here as well. Moving over, actually no, there's more Angmar Marauders from Eothard. We have the Goblins of the Misty Mountains, or the Orcs of the Misty Mountains, played by bluebolt.gg. Naturally, some heavy Goblin infantry, which again, similar in terms of their functionality to the Angmar Marauders, only I think they're slightly worse in melee. So we've obviously got some of them, but then numbers are going to be the way that the Orcs are going to try and play this game. More heavy Goblin infantry, more heavy Goblin infantry. Back here we do have the Cave Trolls, however, which will be very good at sort of cracking through the lines, and considering the Elves have to take losses before Rohan can come to their aid, the Cave Trolls can find some potentially squishy parts of the line which they can sort of charge their way through, as can the Drake Broodlings. Up here on this little hilltop we have the Bolgs Champions, which are going to be the Misty Mountains General, I believe, indeed. And again, very, very powerful in terms of cavalry-to-cavalry combat. None of the Imladris or Rohan units are going to want to take the Bolgs Champions lightly, at least their cavalry. Then moving over to the front line, We do have the Black Uruks, which of course are a very necessary part of the Misty Mountains roster when it comes to trying to fight the elves, because most of their standard heavy goblins will just do horribly in that situation without a little bit of more substantial support, which the Black Uruks do offer. The 2 White Uruk Fearmongers units here will also be very, very useful for causing fear to the enemy, of course, but also that Phalanx will keep the goblin line in check for a little bit longer. More Black Uruks, and then moving over we have Neodolko, or Neodanulko, who's going to be playing also as the Misty Mountains, so we've got more Black Uruks. We actually have the Heavy Goblin Crossbowmen, which again is a very nice part of the Misty Mountains roster, because they do blend in a little bit. You know, they blend in with all of the Heavy Goblin Archers, the Heavy Goblin Infantry. They're a little bit more difficult to pick out, which can often mean you can get a couple of volleys off without your opponent realising they're there, but of course, as soon as a whole unit starts to be wiped out by the stopping power of crossbows, they will be very much public enemy number 1. A couple of units of Black Uruks back here as well, and then we'll start to get into more crossbows and then more archers as well, so a very spread out, as I said before, a very spread out look to all of these armies up here. Cave trolls, cave trolls, cave trolls, a lot of cave trolls, which again can be used to crack through the lines, and then obviously some heavy goblin infantry as well to just sort of be the first ones in, the fodder. More heavy goblin infantry up on that hill as well, and more heavy goblin infantry. And then finally, the other Angmar army is going to be played by Agalar Galudithon? Agalar? Anyway, we have some Orc Fellas, again an Angmar army, so some AP, which not useless against Imladris, but the low skill of these Orc Axemen is really going to make them suffer against the Elven infantry, but the AP will at least allow them to get some damage done. If they're supported, then they might be a little bit better off. There's a lot of Orc Fellas back here actually. Obviously they're going to be terrible against arrow fire as well, which both Rohan and Imladris can bring in abundance, even if Rohan have got a little bit more of a focus around their horse archers. Which realm Scourge Raiders again in numbers, again though weak to arrow fire. Trolls of Gundabad. And then back here we've also got some Warg Riders. A lot of Wargs actually, interestingly enough, as well as a fair amount of Snaga, so they've got their own ranged presence as well with 4 units of Snaga. A lot of Wargs as well, and then back here also they have the Witch Realm Inquisitors. So this army over here is definitely more focused around its supporting elements, I think, with its low tier archers, and in particular its Trolls and its Wargs, because they will be able to potentially hold back any Imladris or Rohan cavalry. However, let's move on to the Elven armies first of all. So again, 25% of the Elven armies in total must be defeated before Rohan can come to their aid. And we'll start off with Inarius. This is going to be who the battle is from the perspective of. Got some Imladris sentries here on the front, which of course, their armour is very good. Like as far as pikemen go, they're really very, very solid, and it's also going to mean that a frontal warg charge is probably not going to happen. The Blade Masters do have an anti-cavalry bonus of their own. Of course, they are still susceptible to a charge, however, but even so, more anti-cavalry is going to be good on this flank, you would say, especially seeing it's a little bit of a wider engagement over here. There's more Blade Masters as well. Obviously, I would imagine the Imladris forces are going to be very much focused around their quality. Imladris Guardians over here, they've got some Eldar Makar up on the hill, as well as some more Eldar Makar here at the back. You can see how much the Elven armies are spread out, however, the upgraded Eldar Makar, purely because they have to cover the whole map, otherwise they're just going to be flanked, and they need to hold all these lines until Rohan can actually come to their aid. Some upgraded Imladris Guardians as well, which of course far superior to any line infantry that the Orcs can field. Even the Guardians of Khan Doom can't really hold a candle to them. A couple of units of Imladris Sentinels as well, so Spear Cavalry. So Imladris do have a bit of cav of their own, but they do need to be careful because most of the Wargs will trade quite efficiently. With a unit like this, if they can double up on them, which there are Wargs in numbers where you would imagine that's probably going to be the case, even if the Imladris Sentinels, with a charge, should beat them 1-to-1. Then we have some Eldarenway Harry Hatal, obviously a very nice unit of Eldarenway Spears, and then here in the central encampment, we've got some more Eldarenway Harry Hatal, Eldarenway Harry Quinga. The elves could actually fall back and sort of take cover within the encampment, I think, which would be an interesting move if they were to do that. We have the God Helim, which I believe are the General's bodyguards, obviously again, very, very good at range and in melee, but no armor upgrade for them, interestingly enough. Eldarenway Harry Quinga as well, 2 units of them, and then there's some Imladris Guardians covering that. So across all of these choke points, there's generally speaking only 1 unit which is covering each one, so we'll see how well the elves can do there. The second Elven army is played by Chisholm21, so he's got some Eldar Quinga over here, and I believe, yep, some more upgraded Eldar Quinga as we move back. It's going to be a very similar story, Eldar Makar and Eldar Quinga as well. So the Imladris armies are fairly elite, but not ridiculous. These Imladris sentries as well are actually covering a choke point which leads to nowhere, so they're actually fighting with their backs to the wall, really. Another unit of pikes as well, although with plentiful gaps in and around them. More Eldar Makar, lots of Eldar Makar in fact, so that's the bulk of Chisholm's army, as well as some Eldarenway Harry Makeel. He has his own encampment which he can also potentially fall back to within. Eldorman with Heru McKeel, Heru Hatal, Heru Hatal, Heru McKeel. So this is where all of his elites are, clearly. More Heru McKeel and more Heru McKeel. So yeah, that's a very elite army indeed, actually, now that we've seen all the Eldorman Way units back here. And then there's some more Eldarkwinger as well. So, now we shall get on to the two Rohan armies, starting off with DI, or King of the North, as he's now known. Obviously playing as Rohan. So we have some civilians over here who probably not going to be doing much, but again, these are the reinforcements. We have some Eastmark Horse Archers, which again, just more ranged pressure is going to be good, particularly against the Angmar armies, it would seem, based on the enemy compositions. Helmingas, of course, as far as Rohan Archers go, this is the best that you can bring on foot. So a couple of units of them. More Eastmark Horse Archers over on the other side, and then the Central Infantry. Eowyn Shield Maidens, which as of 0.96.1 are still AP. They will not be in 0.97, however. Higher base damage instead. Westmark Marshals, which again are going to be a very nice unit for dealing with these orcs, because most of the orcs, the bulk of their survivability comes from their armour, which of course the Westmark Marshals are going to cut through very, very efficiently. Some Eastmark Spearmen as well. Then we actually have the Westmark Infantry, which once upon a time Rohan didn't really have a sort of decent line infantry unit, but that is not the case anymore. The Westmark Infantry can certainly fill that role. Westmark Spearmen as well. Some Meduseld Guard, which obviously a very good javelin unit. The Hornburg Sentries, as well as some Sons of Yule and some Riders of the Fold back here as well. So overall a fairly decent Rohan comp. Westmark Spearmen, there are a few sort of lower tier units, a few mid tier units in the Riddermark Spears as well, and the Westmark units. And then some elites as well. I'd imagine it's probably going to be a similar story on the other side as well, with Arsal's army. So Westmark Infantry, has he got anything that DI has not? Riddermark Spears, Eastmark Spears, all of the Spearmen. Civilians, Eastmark Horse Archers, yeah, Westmark Spears, Infantry, Helmingas. He too has got the Westmark Marshals and the Meduseld Guard and the Hornburg Sentries and the Shield Maidens and the Sons of Yule. So yeah, pretty much identical armies on both sides. They've even got the same composition of Horse Archers as well. So, without further ado, let's begin. And again, 24,000 frames is not a huge amount. And I would imagine that the key for the Orcs here is trying to get as much damage done as quickly as they possibly can. Because when the percentage threshold has been met, Rohan still need to move into position to reinforce the Elves. And with how thinly spread the Elven defences actually are, even if these positions are sort of manned by elite troops like Imladris Guardians with the armour upgrade over here, and like the Imladris Sentries and all of those sort of units, they still will take a lot of damage if the attackers attack quickly enough. And there's a couple of Drake Broodlings immediately bearing down on this position. You can see Anarius is sort of pulling back a little bit to try and cover some of the more defensible positions, maybe trying to fall back to the encampment and to some choke points which are a little bit more easily defended, like this one over here, which of course on the Dead Marsh is traditionally what you're going to be doing. However, you can see over here that I think this unit of Imladris Guardians is going to be the unit which takes the initial brunt of the casualties, because the Drake Broodlings are barreling towards them, and of course the Drake Broodlings do have a very nice charge bonus, and the Imladris Guardians are pretty thinly spread. They're a strong unit, the Imladris Guardians, but this is exactly the sort of thing the Drake Broodlings will enjoy doing. And there they go. So they are going to be able to get through them relatively quickly if they choose to charge on through. And there you can see the Drake Broodlings are immediately just going to keep motoring through that line. They didn't kill an awful lot, the charge didn't seem to connect all that easily. You can also see over here, there is actually the Neodolko's general is actually in the Drake Broodlings. You see Azog is riding on one of these Drakes. But a little bit of indecision there maybe, not following through on the charge. He could actually assassinate the Elven general here if he follows through on that charge. Elrond does go flying there. The Drake Broodlings over here continuing to go about their grisly work, just charging backwards and forwards through the Imladris Guardians. I'm not sure why it's laggy. Yeah, there goes Azog. He charged right into the Lion's Den here with several units of Heru Quingo ready to shoot him down, so that's one Orc general destroyed immediately. That's of course bad news for the Orcs because they rely on this sort of morale a little bit more so. The Warg Riders are coming in, but they could actually be caught out by a unit of charging pikemen. The Warg Skirmishers are coming over here, and this could be a little bit gung-ho from Chisholm, because if these Warg Riders simply back up a little bit, that is going to allow these Warg Skirmishers to throw their javelins in, and getting rid of a unit of Imladris Sentries is going to be a big win. It's one of the best ways that Imladris can use to hold the line, and that is going to be very key for them as this battle goes on. Well, what is going on over here? This unit of Imladris Sentinels is behind enemy lines really, and they're starting to go to town on these more exposed units of heavy goblin infantry. I'm very surprised actually that's happening on this side of the battlefield, considering the huge quantity of Warg Riders that Aguilar has available to him. Meanwhile, you can see over here that the Warg Skirmish is able to get a decent amount of kills into the Imladris sentries before being forced essentially to retreat, as the Elder Runway Harry Vital are also on rushing. Over here you can see that there is a little bit more skirmishing going on between the Wargs and the Elven defensive line, but you can see as well, I'm not really sure what's happened to my graphics settings, to be honest with you, because this is a little bit brighter and I haven't changed anything, which is rather strange. But the Eldar Winger are going to be able to fire in to the Warg Skirmishers. It's going to be a pretty decent couple of volleys there, but you can see that the Warg Riders are charging in here, and this is going to be a fairly hefty charge, because the Eldar Winger are they are lighter archers. Even with the armour upgrade, a charge from the Wargs is going to be fairly effective as they go down here. The Elder Enway are here, trying to sort of cover the gaps, but this is the issue the Elves do have. You know, the Elves are having to cover these very large choke points with very stretched armies, and this is going to lead to gaps appearing. The Orcs can certainly take advantage of the Eldar Winger there, taking a good amount of casualties. Meanwhile, some Imladris Sentinels are right in and amongst it over here, and they have managed to get some decent kills off so far, but now they are also being caught up to by the Warg Riders in the air. They're broken and fighting to the death. They charged in a little bit too far into the enemy lines. And now with the Inquisitors on the way as well, they're broken and fighting to the death. But they are actually causing a bit of a blob here, which the Elven Archers could take advantage of. As you can see here, Inarius has fallen back to the encampment, a more defensible position, which is going to allow him to defend against the Cave Trolls a little bit more easily, and he's got his huge amount of archers over here. Proportion of archers, which wasn't going to make any sense there. But yeah, so obviously the Elder Enway Heru Quinga going to be able to get a lot of kills here if they focus on the right targets. The Cave Trolls, not really the most efficient target to go after, because they can absorb a fair amount of arrow fire, and you could be killing off a huge chunk of the goblins as they rush forward. But I think they're actually going to be okay, because the Cave Trolls are just sort of getting in here and are staying in prolonged melee, which the Cave Trolls aren't really great in sustained melee, to be honest. And now they're being surrounded by units which are good in sustained melee. All of these Elder Enway units are going to be able to get in here and do a good amount of damage. You can see over here as well, the Drake Broodlings are still charging around. The Imladris Sentinels are still fighting to the death. The Imladris Guardians actually taking that charge pretty well. Not too many of them are dying off. You can see here that certainly Inarius is leaving some units behind in lines to make sure he can't be sort of charged in the back by cavalry. You see more Drake Broodlings over here, but he is certainly trying to sort of shift over to the centre and get to a more defensible position, which is certainly wise, I think. The narrower you can make an engagement with Imladris when they have units of this quality, you know, the better time you're going to have, especially against units like this. I mean, heavy Goblin Infantry is just going to stand no chance at all against the front line, which is made up of Heru Vital and upgraded Imladris Guardians. There's going to be absolutely no progress made by these units. It's going to really come down to crossbows, I think, whether the Misty Mountains can actually do anything here. And this is without considering the Rohan reinforcements, remember. There are a couple of Cave Trolls in behind here, but again, the Heru Quinga and the God Helene can certainly hold their own in melee, so I don't really think the Cave Trolls are going to get too much done back here. They will disrupt the archers from firing for a little while. There is actually a unit of Heru Quinga out here which is not in the encampment itself, so they could actually be taken out by a combination of the Drakes and the Cave Trolls. What's going on over here on this side of the map, however? You see these Wargs are in behind enemy lines as well, rather like the Imladris Sentinels in the middle. And I feel as though they need to be very careful, because charging into and trying to thin out the ranks of these Elder Enway Heru Makeel is certainly not a bad idea, but you know, if you stay in melee for any length of time with them, the Warg Riders are just going to get mulched, because the Heru Makeel is so good, so damaging in melee. You can now see that Goblin Trackers have revealed themselves and starting to shoot into the Elven positions themselves, and in 0.96 of course. Cheap archers like this can be very, very efficient over a long period of time, but I'm not really sure whether the Orcs have got the luxury of time here. Like I said, I feel as though the early section of the match was going to be where most of this was decided. I feel as though the Elves have done a good job so far, sort of making sure that the Orcs don't just wash over them quickly. I think particularly here in the middle, where Inarius seems to be the target of a lot of the Orcs' attentions, he has certainly used the map to its fullest capabilities. Sort of, this is what I would have done, as I said before, sort of retreating back to this encampment, which is a little bit more defensible, was certainly the way to go, I think, particularly seeing as he seems as though he's getting 3 armies barrelling down on him. You can see the Warg Riders are here, you can see some Warg Riders are charging into the encampment as well, but there's not really enough of them, and again, the Elder Enway Heru Quinga are strong enough in melee to the point where they're very quickly cutting down these low skill Warg Riders, and they're immediately broken as well, fighting to the death, so they're not even going to get out of here. 17 is also not a huge amount, so they might not even come back from that routing. More Elven reinforcements as they continue to come down here and set up another front line over here as Eldar Makar and Heru Quinga are coming in. You can see here the very ill-fated assault from the heavy goblins on this encampment. The heavy goblin infantry has just been sent packing. There's a lot of arrows coming in. Goblin archers from the Misty Mountains trying to do their best, as well as heavy goblin archers. But again, a lot of these Imladris units heavily armoured, a lot of them have got shields. So it's really going to take the crossbows to get into a good position to start doing a lot of damage quickly. Or a mass cav charge from the rear, but I don't think that's going to happen because Galudithon is sending over his wargs to try and charge into the back of Chisholm's army instead. And Chisholm hasn't really come under any sort of scrutiny in melee just yet. You see here the Elder Enway Heru Quinga, and actually the goblins here in the middle are in danger of actually just being straight up driven back by the elves. You can see over there that the Scourge Raiders are on the way over, but the infantry reinforcements from Angmar have really not been quick enough. You can see that they are sort of trying to cycle around, but they need to be faster. The heavy goblin archers are broken and fighting to the death as the Heru Quinga here leading a counter-attack. You can see a very one-sided infantry engagement over here as the heavy goblin infantry are fighting pretty much every infantry unit Imladris has to offer. The Blackback Berserkers are on the front line, but they're all on their own, and they will almost certainly be the target of enemy archers. Over here, maybe a little bit better off, because there's simply a lot more goblins. There's a few Black Uruks on the way. The Trolls and the Drakes also did a good amount of damage, but even so, Imladris still stand firm. Meanwhile, over here, these wargs charged in and were immediately broken by a combination of the Gwaithie Arthand, which actually missed in the compositions, and the Elder Enway Harry McKeel. So it does just go to show that when the hit points have been expended from the Warg Riders, they are very, very fragile indeed. There is certainly a shelf life on the Warg Riders that as soon as that is passed, they are much less effective. Aethab, meanwhile, is getting ready. It seems to move in on two flanks, but I'm not sure whether a single army is going to be enough here, especially seeing as a lot of it is Angmar Marauders. There are a few good units, the Scourge Raiders and the Guardians of Khan Doom here as well, but I think if Chisholm just sort of holds his ground, all he needs to do is wait, and then the Rohan reinforcements will come in and clean up. Inarius, on the other hand, here in the middle, is probably, I would say eventually, this sustained pressure from multiple angles probably will yield some results in favour of the Orcs, but the problem is that they're going to be very battered and bruised when that is done, and when Rohan starts to be deployed, it's going to be bad news, I think, for the Orcs. You can see that they are being pushed back, and the Drakes are also charging right into the front. I believe the Drakes count as elephants in the game files, just to sort of give them the weakness to fire arrows that they are known for. But this does, of course, mean that pikes will be effective against them if they stay in sustained melee with pikemen. But I think they're just going to sort of sit there. You can see here the Scourge Raiders actually finding a gap as well, so this is what the Orcs really should have been doing from the start, taking advantage of their far superior numbers in the first phase of the fight. And trying to find these gaps and sort of surrounding the elves. You can see over here as well that Galudithon, or Galudithon, keep having to correct myself there, starting to flood in with all of these low tier Orc Axemen, but it's the numbers here which are going to be the best friend to the Orcs. Can the elves hold on? Defeat is almost a certainty for the Heru Quinga at this point, because there are so many units now just flooding in. The Trolls are on the way. The Drakes are actually not dying to the pikemen as much as I thought, so maybe that is not the case. I always thought that pikemen were good against elephant class units. It was just that elephants were so heavy they were able to push out of pikes before they did any substantial damage. But as it is, now, with the support of Angmar, both of the Misty Mountains armies are starting to do the business on the elves, and with half of Inarius' army gone, I think that is the trigger for Rohan starting to move. Although I think for the time being they're still content to just sort of hang back. Having a look at the percentage of kills, well, 19%, so I guess not. I guess they're waiting for the 25% to be reached. Let's see how the elves are getting on over here. Not well at all by the looks of things, actually. Once again, this is how the Orcs should have been used at the earliest possible opportunity, I think, because they're immediately finding these gaps, they're immediately surrounding these Elven infantry units, and all of a sudden what was looking like a fairly good engagement for the elves, if they were able to keep their line in check, like over here, it's really the Trolls that have done most of the damage. But now they need Rohan to rescue them, actually. My word. And also they're going to be recharged here by depleted units of wargs, but even so. Yeah, this is not looking good at all for Chisholm at this point. You can see here the Guardians of Khan Doom here. The centre to this line, the Scourge Raiders. Without any sort of arrow fire going into them, they're able to lay down their damage. There are some Harry McKeel over here as well. And yeah, the sheer amount of Harry McKeel that are over on this flank, I felt for sure that the Elves would be able to hold out a little bit better than they have done. Even on this flank. Well, actually, to be fair, on this flank, the Witch Realm Blackguard has... Hold on a second. Surely not. Well, so it seems. I think that the Inarius has actually thrown in the towel, which surprises me a little bit. Again, he was losing this fight, but he had a couple of units left, which, you know, this unit of Eldar Harry Mahatal and Eldar Makai would have been able to get more kills, especially against heavy goblin infantry. If his allies go on to lose this fight by a small margin, he will not be the most popular member of this lobby, to be sure. But Rohan is sorely needed on the front line now, and DI is starting to move. You can see Chisholm, a lot of his units are breaking as well. I think actually Chisholm's army is completely gone. That's crazy. So now it's down to Rohan. Can they save the day? The Orcs have suddenly managed to swing this fight around. It was looking pretty grim for them actually in the earlier stages of this fight, but they've managed to sort of stage a comeback really, and now it's up to Rohan. Rohan's armies are pretty good, but not to the same level of quality as having 4 units of Eldar Harry McKeel. The Sons of Yor were thinking about a frontal charge, but they thought better of it. Eowyn's Shield Maidens are over here now, so the Orcs I think are just going to try and punch right on through, over on this flank anyway. Again, those Sons of Yor were thinking about getting a sneaky charge on the Angmar Marauders, but you don't want to sort of lose Sons of Yor cheaply to trolls. And there go those Elven units. Actually, I don't know, was it Chisholm or was it Inarius that quit? I think it was Inarius based on what the announcer said, but very strange indeed. So, the Orcs can claim victory over the Elves, total victory, with both of the Elven forces now crumbling away. You can see over here the Warg Riders getting taught a lesson by the Rohirrim Horse Archers, and of course Wargs not great against Horse Archers. They're very low armour, particularly seeing as most of them have seen combat at this point. A lot of hit points will have been expended. Eastmark Spearmen holding down the centre there. The Westmark Spears as well, the Eowyn Shield Maidens getting into position. The Goblin Trackers starting to skirmish with the front line. This might convince Rohan that they can't just afford to stay in a line, but I think actually charging forward would be suicide for Rohan. They need to try and make the most of a good defensive position. The Sons of Yor are swinging around to the back lines, maybe looking for some juicy targets to charge. A very strange fight so far, I have to say. These Helmingas are also moving into position, so the skirmish is going to begin over on this front, but I don't envy Arsal's task, because I think the vast bulk of the Orc strength is located over on this side of the map. And now you can see, I think majority of it's going to be only Snaga archers, but even so, all of that damage will add up. The Helmingas are going to try and shoot in, and they do have a lot of good targets after them, actually. They can go after stuff like Orc Fellas, and you can see that they are already, and they will thin out those Orc numbers pretty quickly. And there goes the Rohan Horse Archers over on this side as well, so trying to sort of... Rohan actually don't have too much in the way of Lancers. They only have those 2 units of Knights divided between the 2 armies at this point. Most of their cavalry is actually their Horse Archers, which could be good, as long as these Eastmark Horse Archers don't single file line into those Black Uruks. They need to be very, very careful, and it's good that Arsal decided to turn those Horse Archers around. You can see over here the Eastmark Spearmen are actually acting as meat shields for the Westmark Marshals. The Westmark Marshals will be absolutely vital to hold this line. They're good against basically all of the Angmar infantry over on this front. The exception really being the Witch Realm Blackguard. All those javelins up on that hill as well, the Westmark Spearmen are waiting. And Eothad is going to have to sort of try and take on this Rohan army on his own. I don't think he'll actually be successful though. I think over on this side, Rohan probably have the advantage, but it's over on the other side where I worry for Rohan a little bit. I just think there's simply too much in the way of numbers on the part of the Orcs for Rohan to be victorious over the long haul, I think.
Unless we defeat our foes quickly, our army is tiring.
Yeah, no kidding. Most of it's retreated from the field, but yes, the Rohan spear line at this point is still holding. But the Black Uruks are here, and unfortunately there's a huge gap in this front line, which immediately the Orcs are going to take advantage of. Again, I'm not really sure why you would cover this section of the front line, but leave a massive gap over here for the Orcs to just flood in through. And at this point, Chaos is probably going to take hold. I mean, you can see these Orc fellas are still taking damage. The Helmingas are here. Where are the Shield Maidens? Yeah, Shield Maidens and Horse Archers. The Hornburg Sentries are on the way over now as well, but the Black Uruks and the Orc fellas coming in. The Trolls are also on the way. The Westmark Marshals are on the front line now, however, which might be enough to start turning this fight around. They'll be pretty good against the Trolls as well, those big axes, of course, the AP getting through the armour on those large, scary Trolls from the north. Here come the Witch Realm Scourge Raiders as well. A lot of arrows flying in. But again, actually most of those going into the backs of their own men. And so far, Rohan are holding the line, to give them their credit. You can see just the amount of Orc reinforcements there are. It's going to be rough. And I feel as though, again, to their credit, they were able to sort of form up another front line, but you can see the Trolls are just on the way. The Hornburg Sentries are coming in here now, though. Here come the Eowyn Shield Maidens. And there are the Sons of Yore, so what's happening over on this side? Come on, game. Still not really an engagement. I mean, DI might have to be more proactive here and try and destroy Aethad, because Arsal's going to lose on the other front eventually. And if he just sort of sits here, he is going to charge in with his Westmark Spearmen. I would back the Westmark Spearmen to win this fight, because the Angmar Marauders are sort of a very low quality Orc line infantry unit. What are these units doing? The Angmar Marauders maybe trying to probe for a weakness in this front line. There's Rohan over here still unmoving. Over here, however, is where the bulk of the action is taking place. And the Trolls combining their might, and again, you have to, I keep saying it, but you have to be prepared that this sort of thing can happen. Of course, if the enemy has Trolls, they're going to try and get in behind, sort of through your lines into your skirmishers. If you have no response to that, then you've got no one to blame but yourself. Meanwhile, these Witch Realm Scourge Raiders are going to get trampled underfoot by the Sons of Yore. But the Sons of Yore are also immediately going to get engaged in melee by the Witch Realm Inquisitors, which is certainly not the sort of fight they want to take. This is exactly what the Witch Realm Inquisitors will want. Arrows flying in, but again, the Witch Realm Inquisitors, good shields, good armour, multiple HP. If they wanted to kill off the Witch Realm Inquisitors, they would need the Eowyn Shield Maidens or the Meduseld Guard. The Sons of Yore are going right in there to try and kill off more of the Scourge Raiders, but it could cost them their lives here, because the Witch Realm Inquisitors, of course, melee knights. It's exactly the sort of fight they're good at. The Sons of Yore will not die. They won't sort of die without killing a single Witch Realm Inquisitor, but it would still not be the sort of fight they would want to take. Especially not when there's infantry support right next to them. You can see here on the front line, however, the combination of Westmark Marshals with those axes and all of those Rohan spearmen holding the line has sort of stopped the infantry advance in its tracks. Over here, Orc fellas, victory seems certain. You can see the Blackback Mountain Berserkers are over here fighting off against the Hornburg Sentries. There's a lot of Westmark infantry again. It's the Blackback Berserkers are really the thing which is giving them the victory seems certain tooltip. This, however, is a real tragedy. The Eowyn Shield Maidens, possibly Rohan's best chance at doing a substantial amount of damage to the Orcs over on this side, and they're just being mown down by these Trolls. And they are essentially being abandoned to their fate by Arsal. You know, and I feel as though that is a huge misplay. You know, the Shield Maidens are your ticket to doing a lot of damage here. If you leave them to die, you know, that's mission accomplished on the part of the Orcs. They'll be delighted with that. And you can see here that more gaps are appearing. The Meduseld Guard are here. There goes the Rohan General. You can see he was just hunted down by the Witch Realm Inquisitors, and you can see the Witch Realm Inquisitors have taken damage of their own, but certainly the better end of that engagement was on the part of Angmar, and now you can see the front line is starting to get surrounded. The Witch Realm Scourge Raiders in behind the lines. The Meduseld Guard trying to fire in their javies. Individually it's a lot of damage, but there simply isn't enough of them to do a huge amount of damage, and they don't have the body piercing that the Demons of the Desert have. So, unfortunately not great. But the Meduseld Guard are very strong in melee, of course, but you can see here a very thin line of Westmark Marshals at this point, holding back a ton of Snaga. Things going better for Rohan over on this front, and again you can see the Trolls just pushing their way through. The Sons of Yore are over here. They could try and skewer the Trolls. And those spearmen are still holding the line. DI pulling back, but yeah, I mean, you can see over here that once again, it's just a case of gaps were found, and the orcs have started to sort of surround the forces of good. That was the only way the orcs were going to win this fight. If they sort of trickled in and tried to just fight line to line, especially against those Elven armies with all those units of Elder Enway, they would have lost this fight fairly comfortably. But I feel as though the coordination between the orc armies was pretty good. You know, they charged in. I mean, over here it was really just a 1v1. But really, Eothard deserves a huge amount of credit because he's been able to defeat essentially an Imladris army by himself and then move on to a Rohan army. Now, I don't know if he's going to overall defeat DI's Rohan force, but DI will certainly not be in a position to stop the rest of the orcs over on this side when they are done. You can see here a lot of these infantrymen are now breaking. The Westmark Marshals still fighting hard, but the numbers around them, it's just not going well for them at this point. The Snaga archers acting as the fodder in melee. Over here, Blackback Mountain Berserkers defeat seems certain now, to be fair, which actually surprises me a little bit. I think enough of the Hornburg sentries are dead that nothing can really match them in melee anymore, but there you go. Meanwhile, Wargs back here. Defeat is a distinct possibility. That's interesting with 30 Wargs. They might be getting friendly fire by their own archers, actually, which might not be helping matters, because Warg Riders should be able to defeat Riders of the Fold in melee. Riders of the Fold, the way they deal with Wargs is with their bows, not with their axes. Here come the Witch Realm Inquisitors as well, so what's left of the Rohan force is almost certainly going to break when the Witch Realm Inquisitors start hammer and anvil charging the back of this Rohan line. Yeah, and you can see here the Trolls standing triumphant over the Eowyn Shield Maidens. So again, those Eowyn Shield Maidens could have done huge damage to the Orcs, but they were abandoned. More Orc fellas coming in. Most of the Orc forces are exhausted at this point. They continue to flood forwards. Heavy Goblin Archers firing in as well, just chipping away at the enemy. And I think that's just about it for Arsal's force, and having a look at the percentage of kills. A lot of the Orcs have fallen, to be fair, but I don't think DI is going to be able to hold them back at this point. The Hornburg Sentry's victory seems certain. Are you sure? Blackback Berserkers, still 33 of them. And the Trolls of Gundabad still just sort of stomping the Eowyn Shield Maidens around. Here come the Snaga, so I think it is just the Hornburg Sentries at this point, unless I'm very much mistaken. Unless the Medusal Guard wriggled away somewhere. I don't think they did. The Eowyn Shield Maidens are shaken. Let's see what's happening over here. Based on the fact that the red has spread all the way into the backfield over here, the advance from Eothard's Orc army has continued. Rohan have got their Helmingas into position, but victory seems certain for those Angmar Marauders as well. Again, Eowyn Shield Maidens, a tragic sight when your axe throwers and javelins get engaged in melee by a unit of fodder. Medusal Guard defeat seems certain for them as well, purely because there isn't enough of them, although with the support of that charge, that will turn around, certainly. Well, up on this hill, these Westmark Spearmen are still holding. Again, Spearmen, if there's one thing they can do in 0.96, it's that they can hold for a pretty long time. Rise of the Fold still charging around. Those East Mark Force Archers are routing, the Snaga Skirmishers doing the business there. This Rohan front line is still here, although unfortunately for them they are also going to start being engaged. The Snaga Skirmishers are throwing their javelins in, the Heavy Goblin Infantry is here. This front line is just being slowly chipped down by those Snaga Javies. What's happening over here? Does Rohan even have anything left over on this side? The announcer hasn't told me that Arsal has been defeated fully yet, but I think he has, because the rest of the Orcs are now just sort of making their way over to DI to destroy him once and for all. As the Heavy Goblin Infantry charging into this Rohan shield wall, and they will hold. The Rohan forces will beat a single unit of Heavy Goblin Infantry, but look at all of those reinforcements that are waiting to come in, including Cave Trolls. The Cave Trolls could make mincemeat of this front line, actually. They could just charge right on through it. And that has been the bane of the humans and the elves. Yeah, there goes Arsal. So that has been the bane, really, as I said, of the humans and the elves so far. The fact that, you know, they were just able to take advantage of the very thin front lines that they put up. The orcs were victorious here. Some goblin trackers. There are actually some routing Angmar marauders down here as well, but here come the Witchround Blackguard. The Medusel Guard are a very strong melee unit. I believe they're being renamed to the Keepers of the Golden Hall in 0.97. But even so, you know, this is a match that they're not going to win. They might kill off a few more marauders before they're brought down, but other than that, there are the Hornburg sentries. The Sons of Yule still doing the business as well, charging around. Knights, of course, extremely potent on the charge. But yeah, I think overall, if this battle was allowed to continue to be a 1 versus 1 with all these reinforcements, Eothad would lose to DI. But he still deserves a lot of credit for the amount of progress he's made basically on his own, while his 3 allies formed up a big death blob and moved around the battlefield, extinguishing one army after the other. And now, unfortunately, DI is having to fight a battle on multiple fronts. There was an interesting lag spike there. The Westmark infantry are celebrating, so they have managed to kill off a unit of heavy goblin infantry, but unfortunately for them now, the big guns are moving forward. Not another unit of heavy goblin infantry, of course, but the cave trolls, as they slowly waddle into position. There isn't really any reinforcements on hand either, which is the most worrying thing. As soon as this line is sort of circumvented by the trolls and they push their way through, that's going to be it. There's also some Mountain Orc Berserkers moving forwards, a unit which again I missed in the composition because they can hide. Westmark infantry again, they're pretty good line infantry, but trolls are so heavy duty, and you can see here the cave trolls already basically tearing a massive hole in the line. And already the Rohan forces are wavering. Well, shaken. Here come the Rohan cavalry. Don't know if they can really achieve all that much at this point, however. The Drake Broodlings charging in, but the mighty civilians send them packing. And then you can see over there that Eothad has claimed this hill, which of course, you know, DI is being forced further and further back. Of course, if the Orcs still have cavalry, they could send them around the backfield over here. Not that they really need any further assistance, I think, because the cave trolls have already cleared a big hole which all of the Orc infantry can start moving through at its leisure. This Rohan cavalry needs to do something at this point. I mean, I don't think DI can win no matter what he does, but he may as well be proactive with his cav, try and charge in, get a few kills. The White Uruk Fearmongers are on the way over here, however. And the Rohan cav certainly doesn't want to try frontally charging into the White Uruk Fearmongers, because they can do a lot of damage quite quickly. The Horse Archers are still there though, but I think at this point Horse Archers are just not going to be able to get the kills quickly enough. And also there are still defensive archers to Snaga. It may very well have been as well that Inarius' army fell apart so quickly in Chisholms because of crossbows, which I simply didn't see during the course of the battle, because of course they blend in. But still, it was remarkable how quickly that battle turned in the middle. Actually, Inarius seemed to be doing really well, and then all of a sudden, as soon as the Orcs came forward in enough force, his army just crumbled. I feel as though that's because of the gaps that presented themselves, I should say. And I actually have a thought on that, but we'll go into that on the post-battle screen. As the Sons of Yule start to retreat as well, Rohan continuing just to sort of fall further and further back. The hint of tactical geometry appearing. Again, you can hardly blame Rohan for doing that at this point. The Helmingast trying to get what kills they can as well. And they have plenty of good targets to go after. I mean, the Mountain Orc Berserkers are certainly not very resilient to arrow fire. Shirtless hooligans wielding large axes are exactly the sort of thing archers want to be going after to get a lot of kills. Cave trolls also waiting the heavy goblin infantry. Riders of the Fold retreating further back. Eothad's army is getting ready, so I imagine it's going to be a unified push here, as Blue Bolt is going to lead the way, charging into probably the best defended part of the line. Aguilar is also going to follow, although again a little bit stretched out. It's the sort of thing I would criticise, but I mean the attackers, the Orcs I should say, already have this fight in the bag, you would say. The Mountain Orc Berserkers getting in here, getting stuck in. Interestingly enough, Rohan's armour values of course are not quite as high as a lot of the other Western kingdoms of men. You know, they bear a little bit more in common perhaps with Rudawa than a few others. But even so, the AP will still be somewhat useful. The high attack values as well. Here come the cave trolls, of course they know what they're going after. They're going after the one unit of archers, which is still up and about. However, the Eowyn Shield Maidens are here, and they have the opportunity here to get a good volley off onto the cave trolls, which they take. And that's going to be enough to kill at least one of them off. The Helmingars are still trying to run away as they continue to spill in. The goblins are here. Eothad is probably going to start moving forward. You can see there that Aguilar's Witch Realm Inquisitors have also come over here as well. Some Warg Riders sort of being pests in the backfield. I think the Sons of Yore are probably going to see them and just chase them off though. Here come the Drakes. I mean, there's a huge gap which they can take, but fortunately Rohan is paying attention. They're able to move their spears out to engage them in melee. The Cave Trolls, Helmingars can actually look after themselves in melee pretty well. You can see that they are taking casualties pretty quickly against the Cave Trolls here. Again, the Orcs are really in no rush. They know that victory is surely going to be theirs. They're just engaging the line, testing it a little bit. There is a singular wall, but they're immediately broken, of course, by the Sons of Yore. Some more White Brick Fearmongers moving, and there's a lot of reinforcements on the way. I mean, it's not... If they had a couple of units of Knights, this is not the sort of thing which would be insurmountable. It would be unlikely still, but... yeah, especially with those Witch Realm Inquisitors running around. There may only be 12 of them, but also the Sons of Yore are so far and away the most deadly threat that faces the Orcs. They're always just going to focus all of their range firepower on them. More heavy goblins moving forward. Witch Realm Scourge Raiders, and here we go. The initial engagement, all the engagements have followed a similar pattern in this battle so far. The Orcs send forward a couple of units to sort of match up evenly with the defences, and the defences are able to hold very well. And then the next wave comes through and they just go around and surround them. That seems to have been how every sort of flashpoint in this battle has gone so far. And hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There are the Westmark Marshals, another unit which is pretty deadly, and of course now they're taking a lot of arrow fire, as a lot of these Axemen are wont to do. Yeah, the heavy golden crossbows, if they're out of ammunition, they must have used their ammo on the elves earlier on. The Riddermark Spearmen are going to engage them in melee, which of course, easy win for the Riddermark Spears, but reinforcements are on the way as well, and this unit of heavy goblin crossbows still has ammunition. The Blood Spray is coming up over here from the Westmark Marshals, which again, archers doing the business. Civilians, there's Eowyn Shield Maidens. They're still having to sort of defend against Eothad's advance as well. I don't think they have too much of a choice at this point. You've got Orc Fellas coming in, swarming. The Scourge Raiders are not doing well against the Westmark Marshals. The Westmark Marshals are a very good unit at dealing damage. Their problem is, like with most Axemen, that they tend to get focused down by ranged units quite quickly. Here come the Black Uruks pushing onto the front line. The Trolls, which I think the Trolls overall have probably been the MVPs for the attackers. They've done a lot of the heavy lifting for them, and they've done a lot of good work throughout the engagements. These Blackback Berserkers are going to eat these Riddermark Spears for breakfast. There's also these Snaga Archers just pouring over the hill. The Eowyn Shield Maidens are trying to throw their axes. That's also been a problem that Rohan have had. I feel as though all of the Eowyn Shield Maidens they've had not really been able to use their ammunition efficiently at all. Which again is a testament to how quickly the Orcs have moved forward and engaged them in melee, or forced them into a position where they can't use their ammunition. Victory seems certain. Only a fool could lose this battle. Well, the Westmark Marshals were victorious there. But there's a lot more Orcs where that came from. And I don't think 66 Marshals is going to be enough anymore. Oof, those Riders of the Fold, I think... well, there goes DI's General. You can see over here that the Witch Realm Inquisitors are also killing off the Riders of the Fold. So, I don't know if my mouse is breaking or what, but my double click seems to be failing me. But yeah, it was over here. You can see the Sons of Yore, that's where they were. But the Bolgs Champions moving forward, and of course the Bolgs Champions, much like the Witch Realm Inquisitors, definitely a unit you want to avoid in a cav fight. The Shield Maidens, though, getting a little bit of revenge. Those Helmingars are going to break off very, very quickly. I'm surprised there's still this much longer left in the battle, to be honest with you. It's a testament, I think, to how some of these elite Rohan units can actually hold their ground for quite a long time. Here come the Rohan Axemen. They're shaken. Charging into on-rushing heavy Goblin Infantry and Snaga Archers. Trying to pad their kill count a little bit. There are the Shield Maidens. They're getting chopped away at in the back by the Orc fellas, trying to kill off the general of Blue Bolt, but he's going to be able to escape, unfortunately, even if the Volks champions are looking a little bit worse for wear now. Now they're being surrounded by the Orc fellas and the Snaga archers, so they will be forced to fight in melee. And the Owen Shieldmains are not terrible in melee, but they're by far and away not the best unit, and indeed they break actually, which is interesting. They're a unit which inspire nearby units, I think, so it takes a fair amount to break them. The Hornburg sentries, meanwhile, are going to engage with the Snaga skirmishers. That's going to be the end of them, I think, as well. Eothad's army is just content to sort of sit back. He's done his job. Sit back and enjoy as Rohan is slowly bled away. The Hornburg sentries will probably be the last unit left standing, I think, as they try and get right in the middle of all these Snaga so they can't be charged by the cavalry, I think, and get a lot more kills for themselves. Eowyn Shieldmains are just being slaughtered as they try and retreat. That's going to be pretty much that, I think. Well, the Westmark Marshals have come back, and again they're going after the Snaga, which is going to yield a few more kills. But now they're routed, and I don't think they'll come back from that. And that leaves just this singular engagement from the Hornburg sentries. There's a lot of units around them, a lot of it's trash as well, a lot of Orc fellas, a lot of Snaga archers. But the Black Uruks are moving in, which will be a little bit better, and also the Blackback Mountain Berserkers are in here as well. So it's only a matter of time before the finest infantry Rohan can muster is brought down. I think, yeah, the civilians are just being chased off by the Witch Realm Inquisitors. May as well go up to ×2 speed, as this is the final stand. And yeah, it was an interesting fight, because the Orcs have managed to win this, which I'm sure will displease quite a few people. But based on the army compositions, I don't feel as though the elves, the armies of men and elves, were all that bad off. I mean, in particular, the Imladris armies were very elite, and yes, they had a large portion of the map to cover. They were very thinly spread, but I don't feel as though this was a guaranteed victory for the Orcs at all. Especially with how the match started.
Cruel twist of fate that snatched victory from our grasp.
So, I think, well, yeah, the Rohan armies were exactly the same. One of the Angmar forces getting more kills, which I think may have been, I would assume that's Eothad, purely because he was all on his lonesome over on this side of the field. I think one of the key moments in this fight, however, was when Inarius was fighting in the little central area over here. We just sort of, again, the little defeat box is in the way, but just so that we can get a little bit of a visual aid. Where we were fighting over here, you can see that he did actually manage to push them back, but I feel as though in pushing them back he also sealed his doom, because if he'd have stayed in position here, he would have stayed in the choke point, but as he pushed out, gaps appeared on either side, and that was where the Orcs started to pour in, because he pushed back against that single Misty Mountains army that attacked him first, and then the second Misty Mountains army and the Angmar army arrived, and they were able to find the gaps all too easily, and that's when his army was overwhelmed and crushed. Over on the other side as well, I think Chisholm arguably had an even better army with all of those Eldwenwy Harry McKeel units. He made the opposite mistake, really, in that he didn't fall back to the encampment at all to try and defend there, and instead what he tried to do was hold the entirety of the choke point, which that was always going to play right into the Orcs' hands. They were always going to be able to find gaps in that, and then just surround and outnumber his units in true Orc fashion. And honestly, I think the match was kind of decided when both Elven armies basically crumbled at exactly the same time. Because then Rohan were left with simply too much to do. Again, individual mistakes were made there as well. Like, I think Arsal needed to save his Shieldmains. That was his only hope of doing a lot of damage quickly to those three Orc armies. Even if he would have lost, he still could have done a lot of damage and maybe helped DI out. And I think Eothad did reasonably well against DI's army as well, but it was always going to be a very, very tough ask for Rohan to do anything as soon as the Imladris armies were defeated. But yeah, fair play to the Orcs. I think they played pretty well, considering I think some of the Orc players here are newer players. Some of them obviously aren't. I've seen Eothad play a fair few times before, and I've seen Aguilar as well. But yeah, I think they played pretty well. They did exactly what they needed to, whether it was by accident or by design. They did very well together. So yeah, Very well played to all involved. Big thank you to Balagos for sending this one to me. Big thank you to Inarius for giving him the replay to give to me. And whoever made the scenario, again, whether it's Vision, Dark Wolf, or someone else, big thank you to you as well. So it's always good to see a historical battle. Obviously, historical battles like this don't tend to be particularly, they are sort of balanced to go a certain way, sort of to try and follow the history of what actually happened. In this case, however, I feel as though the battle wasn't all that poorly balanced. I feel as though the good team could have won this, certainly. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next, which will probably be a 0.97 scenario, which I've been given the go-ahead to go ahead and do. I've been repeating myself an awful lot today. But yes, I have been given the okay, essentially, to do that. So that will probably be next, and if it's not the next one, then it will be the one after that at the weekend. We'll see. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this. Hope you'll join me for whatever is next.